Hello and good evening, I'm Farhana Sheikh and you're watching AWANI Tonight. The cockpit voice recorder of the aircraft that crashed in Shah Alam will be sent to its manufacturer in Florida, US. Transport Minister Anthony Loke says this is after Singaporean investigators faced difficulties in retrieving data from the memory pub.
Walaupun ada cubaan teleconferencing di antara tim kita dan juga pakar di Singapura bersama dengan manufacturer selama 2 hari, tetapi troubleshooting itu tak berjaya. Jadi kita membuat keputusan supaya tidak meneruskan makmal analisa itu di makmal di Singapura. Tim BSKU akan balik hari ini juga dan mereka akan bagi taklimat kepada saya dan juga MOT, dan selepas itu kita akan buat keputusan untuk hantar mereka ke Florida.
An UMNO candidate representing Barisan Nasional will contest for the Pelangai State seat in the upcoming by-election. Bentong UMNO Deputy Chief Datuk Seri Muhammad Zaini Saleh notes it is the only seat in the Bentong parliamentary constituency that has always been contested by UMNO. He said a meeting would soon be held to discuss the names of potential candidates. The Pelangai seat felt vacant after the death of its assemblyman Datuk Seri Johari Harun, who was one of the passengers involved in the August 17 plane crash near Elmina, Shah Alam. The Election Commission will meet on Thursday to discuss important dates for the by-election. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has announced an additional 6 million ringgit grant for the government's I-Tekad program to assist micro-entrepreneurs in the low-income group. This will bring the overall I-Tekad aid for this year to 10 million ringgit, up from the 4 million ringgit allocated in Budget 2023. I-Tekad is a patron program by Bank Negara Malaysia with the aim of helping low-income micro-entrepreneurs by providing seed capital, microfinancing and structured training to start and sustain their businesses.
Dari segi kos pengurusan lebih rendah daripada beberapa agensi yang dikenali oleh kementerian-kementerian. Dari segi tekanan kewangan kepada kerajaan juga jauh lebih kurang. Jadi tidak ada sebab mengapa program seperti I-Tekad ini tidak boleh dikembangkan. Jadi saya akan bicara dengan Datuk Rashid, kalau dia kata sekarang dia 3,000, kalau ada kapasiti dia 5,000, ia membantu dalam keadaan ekonomi sekarang dan dapat melonjakkan lagi.
There are currently 11 participating banks for the program, with the government targeting for it to reach 20 in a few months. The Prime Minister also stressed that the government has never neglected the M40 group. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, who is also Finance Minister, rejected claims that the government's targeted initiatives have been too focused on B40 group. In responding to the claim, Anwar explained that only a small percentage of the B40 group benefited from government-funded education institutions.
Ada yang menegur mengatakan bahawa pendekatan kita terlalu banyak kepada golongan B40 dan telah mengabaikan M40. Jadi beberapa langkah kita ambil. Tetapi andaian bahawa kita beri pada B40 pun tak betul. Sebab sudah tengok semua sekolah-sekolah menengah sains, MRSM, termasuk Kolej Melayu dan lain-lain. Itu manfaat bagi golongan paling miskin itu sangat kecil. Tak sampai 1-2%. Sebab itu saya usulkan kepada Menteri Pendidikan baru ini mengatakan bahawa sama ada sekolah khas, ada mencadangkan, kalau tidak pun mesti diperuntukkan 1-2%, 4-5% bagi kalangan yang betul-betul miskin. Kalau tidak, kesenjangan itu terus akan berlaku.
In other news, the Communications and Digital Ministry will meet local mobile network operators to discuss additional charges levied by telcos on 5G subscriptions. The Minister, Fahmi Fazil, says there have been reports of certain telcos setting additional charges for their customers to gain access and continue to be subscribed to the 5G network.
Fahmi said telcos are expected to announce affordable or Rahmah 5G packages on August 31st. Currently, the nation has hit 66.8% in terms of 5G network coverage, and with the aim to achieve the 80% target by year's end. He said under the dual network model, half the telcos in the country will be served under Digital Nasional Berhad (DNB), while the other half will rely on services provided by another platform to be announced later.
Both widespread and underreported bullying and sexual harassment cases can create hostile environment in schools and severely impact students' well-being. Therefore, a holistic policy should be put in place in order to create a safe space in schools for our children. Iskandar Shamuddin Hamza, Managing Director of Cempaka International School, highlights the gaps in understanding the different types of cases and their contributing factors that can aggravate the problem further.
Sector from all levels of the school, from school leadership, teachers, parents, and students, there is a lack or gap in understanding and identifying the different factors that contribute towards bullying and harassment. Understanding the different kinds of bullying that can occur in the 21st century, not just physical bullying, but online as well. How does it occur? In what way does it happen? And how it becomes something very toxic? And what are the factors that contribute that make students do that? There's a mental health component to it also that I think we probably should consider.
It has been reported that the Education Ministry is finalizing new guidelines to deal with sexual harassment and bullying in schools. However, Hisham believed that a one-size-fits-all solution does not help solve the problem.
Cases of sexual harassment and bullying, by its very nature, are nuanced, are very specific. It occurs within a specific context and circumstances that there exists no national solution for. The solution for it must be from the school level. So if we have guidelines from KPM centrally, it may not apply universally or as effectively across the board in all kinds of schools. Schools in the cities, schools in rural areas, which have different amounts of resources. So what I would like to see on top of the guidelines is more information. What does the law say? What do principals and teachers need to know in terms of looking out for warning signs and red flags? Information is really the most important thing rather than directives and instructions on what to do. Because then with that information and guidelines that they are supposed to guide, can guide schools to individually come up with a policy that makes sense to them based on the resources that they have.
Therefore, in dealing with cases of bullying and sexual harassment, Hisham advocates for a combined rehabilitative and punitive approach.
Personally, I feel a good mix between the two always works because you want to create a culture, a safe environment. Purely punitive doesn't work as a deterrent. That's very clear. Detention law, expulsion law, suspension, it does not work. So we need to work together at the school level that makes school policy that makes sense once again for what they have on the ground, for what the students like, for what the parents are like, because we're going to need everybody involved, all the stakeholders. I think it's mentioned as well. And that's one part I do like from KPM's statement, that they want to include a lot of different stakeholders in this, different agencies, including the parents and community, to find a solution that makes sense to them for the students to understand what is wrong and what is right.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
Kau nak tembak aku? Barang anggap kau macam adik.
Polis Ibo 3. Siwa dan stream on demand atau sila ke saluran 480.
Welcome back. Real estate mogul Srettha Thavisin has won the backing of Thailand's parliament to become the country's next prime minister. This paves the way to a new coalition government and brings an end to weeks of political deadlock.
Srettha successfully secured support from more than half of the legislature. The 60-year-old is the country's first prime minister in nearly a decade without a military background. Srettha's candidacy was announced by the Pheu Thai party alongside Paetongtarn Shinawat in the lead-up to the May 14th elections, in which the party finished second. Efforts to establish a coalition with the election winner, Move Forward, fell apart due to resistance from Conservative members of the lower house and senators. Srettha will now be tasked to form a new coalition that includes parties backed by the royalist military, which were responsible for coups in 2006 and 2014 that toppled the government led by Putai.
Hours before the vote, Thailand's former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra returned to Bangkok after 15 years in self-exile. The billionaire appeared briefly with family members at a private jet terminal before he was escorted by police to the Supreme Court, where he was ordered to serve 8 years of prison.
Thaksin is serving for 3 convictions passed in his absence, one linked to his former Shin Corp company, another linked to a bank loan and a lottery case. Officials said his health would be closely monitored in prison due to existing issues with his spine, heart and lungs. Thaksin had fled abroad in 2008 to avoid a jail sentence for abuse of power. It was 2 years after the military overthrew him and accused him of corruption, as well as disloyalty to the monarchy, which he has denied.
Meanwhile, Cambodia's newly elected parliament has endorsed Military General Hun Manet as Prime Minister. This finalizes the transfer of power in a country that has been under the leadership of his father, Hun Sen, for nearly 4 decades.
45-year-old Hun Manet garnered substantial support from the National Assembly, which is dominated by his Cambodian People's Party, CPP. The party had won all but 5 parliamentary seats in the July election, after the main opposition was barred from the vote. Hun Manet pledged he would implement the CPP's policies and ensure peace, economic growth, better infrastructure, as well as wage increases for both civil servants and garment workers. He previously served in the armed forces as Cambodia's head of counter-terrorism, deputy chief of his father's bodyguard unit, army chief, and deputy military commander.
Japan will start releasing treated radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean on Thursday. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says the plant's operator has been asked to prepare for the water discharge if weather and sea conditions permit it. The water will be released over 30 years after being filtered and diluted. Some 1.34 million tons of water have accumulated since the 2011 tsunami hit the plant. Japan has been collecting and storing the contaminated water in tanks for over a decade, but space was running out. Its government said releasing the water was a necessary step in the process of decommissioning the plant. The plan, approved 2 years ago by the government, has faced criticism from neighboring countries and local fishing groups, the latter of which fear a threat to their livelihood. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, also green-lighted the plan in July, saying it met international standards and that its impact on people and the environment was negligible. Over in Pakistan, a rescue is underway for 8 people trapped in a cable car over a ravine in the city of Battagram. The group, which includes 7 students, were on their way to school when one of the cables snapped, leaving it hanging by a single cable 274 meters above the ground. Army helicopters have reached the car, but officials say rescue efforts are being hampered by strong winds and concerns that the helicopter's rotor blades could further destabilize the chairlift. Battagram is a remote mountainous region where cable cars are a common mode of transport for residents to get around. Around 150 people in the area take cable cars to school daily due to a lack of transport options. That wraps up AWANI Tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.
Alami kehangatan persembahan bintang-bintang GV.